Hi friends, I'm Jeffy G, back with another interesting video. If you've looked into virtual guitar plugins, you had to come across UJAM and Native Instruments. I'm going to do a comparison of the UJAM virtual guitars, the Native Instrument virtual guitars, and a bag of salad. I know it sounds strange, and you heard me right. See, here's the thing. There's a war going on between these different vendors. UJAM and Native Instruments aren't the only two. There's some other players in that marketplace. So let's get into it. UJAM delivers their virtual guitars in different ways. There are 5 guitar instruments and 5 bass instruments. You can acquire the guitar instruments individually, and each guitar relates to a particular sound. So Silk is a nylon guitar, Amber is a strummed acoustic, Sparkle's kind of like a Stratocaster picking sound, Iron and Carbon are 2 variations on more heavy rock or heavy metal guitars. They also have basses, 5 of them, and probably the best deal if you're interested in the guitar side is to get the 5 guitar player bundle. Each instrument works in a similar way, but they have some slight variations. Native Instruments does the same thing, but they have more. They have 13 what they call session guitar and bass instruments. They do have some other guitar and bass instruments. I just wanted to isolate the fact that these are the ones called session. The latest one they've delivered is upright bass. You can buy these individually, or you could buy them in the complete 14 bundle. And depending on what level of bundle you acquire, which includes dozens and dozens of instruments, not just guitar, you may get some assortment of those session instruments, or all of them. I've opened Logic and I've got Amber up and running from UJAM, which is their virtual guitar, strummed guitar instrument. And it sounds like this. And let me just run through the layout. Everything up in this yellow area really controls the sound. You've got the blend between a microphone and a pickup. The pickup would give you more of the electronic sound of acoustic guitar that's been fitted with a pickup. With the mic, you're going to hear more of the quality of the mics that UJAM used to record this acoustic sampled guitar. The character speaks for itself. You've got a soft setting where it's not as aggressive, and it gets more aggressive as you increase this dial down to hard, where you get, more of a trebly sound. The variance is interesting. When you strum a guitar, you don't hit all the strings at the same time. So if the variance is down low, it is as though you've hit all the strings at the same time. And if you increase the variance, it's more raking your finger or a pick across the strings. Tune is absolutely the tune. You can micro-tune this to some extent. Tune be slightly off from perfect, which, if I'm recording a guitar, I want it to sound perfect, but the truth is guitars are rarely perfectly in tune. Over on the mix side, you've got some settings. A very subtle sound goes to neutral, which is going to sound most like an acoustic guitar. Open rings a little bit more, and glitz at the end adds a lot more character and dynamics. The air adds some high frequency, an EQ that adds some headroom above 15,000 hertz. The width is the stereo spectrum width. And then you've got these 2 opportunities for effects. In Stompbox, you've got a list of familiar effects. For example, you might add, say, a flanger, and the degree to which the flanger is heard is controlled by this. You're really only picking one thing at a time. So if I got flanger and then I want to add old spring, I look back at the list, only one of them is selected at a time. So get around that limitation of just one effect being in play. They've added something called Finisher, another list of effects that are a predetermined grouping of compression and EQ and reverb and delay. When you pick one of these effects, you're actually getting a bunch of things combined. Again, you control the amount with this knob, and you can turn the effects off or on with this switch. All of those control the tone and the sound of the guitar. Down below all of that is where you control what's being played. You can see they've divided up the keyboard into key switches. These ones at the bottom play a particular style. So when you select one, play a note, and I can choose different styles. And you can choose those styles from this long list. And some of the styles are catering to a higher tempo, some to a slower tempo. I choose, say, Windy B. There's a slide. These ones up in the sharps and flats are more effects. Okay, and then in the middle you have something called style phrases. And the difference between these phrases and these common phrases down here is that the common phrases are going to be the same no matter what preset you select and no matter what you do to the sound of the guitar. They're always going to be there. So, if I'm looking for that dive down, the slide down on the strings, it's always going to be in that spot. Then you have style phrases that relate to the preset you've selected. These ones are specific to the sound and have been crafted to support a certain way of playing. And then the last part, from C3 on your keyboard up to F5, is the actual notes. And those notes could play notes or they could play chords. So I'm triggering those chords by just playing one note with one finger on my Midi controller. Amber's doing the rest for me. It's determining what the chord is, and the rhythm of that chord is being determined by this style phrase section. You can also turn on open chords, which will force Amber to play chords on the guitar lower on the fretboard where there's more open strings ringing out. You can get very specific by picking a key. Amber will prevent you from playing chords that don't fit into a certain key. If I say this is going to be in G and its relative minor E, it's going to adjust. In microtuning, you can see here, you can do things to make playing sound a little bit more human. Is everything exactly on the beat? Does it swing? And you can adjust the amount of swing and humanization to be more loose and more tight. That's going to push some of the strumming and notes slightly off the beat. You can also push or pull in terms of feel. Often a guitar player will play ahead of the beat in anticipation of a big chorus, or pull and lag behind during the verse when the singer is singing. Now, when you select a preset, and there's a long list of presets organized into these groups: pop, funk, alternate rock. Lots to choose from here, which is just wonderful. So if I choose Autumn Resonance, it pre-populates the style phrases. I could use common phrases. There's a muted sound. Or I could use these style phrases. So every time I open a new preset, I get a new place to start. And I can change the style separately from the sound. I want it to use styles that are in this style group called B mine. There's a lot of flexibility there. Now, what if you don't want to use any preset pattern or style? Well, that's instrument mode. You've got two main modes here. Player mode, where Amber plays patterns and styles from its library of 354 styles. You got instrument mode, where you still have the key switches for the common phrasing that you can choose with your left hand, and then with your right hand, you can play the whole chord. Playing a C, F, C minor, C. And I can pick the strumming or play the strumming that I want it to execute. You could play any guitar part you want just using Amber as a sound engine with its samples, but not locked into the patterns and chords that it delivers. With a bag of salad, everything in the layout is in the bag. It comes with all the ingredients you need. The only additional thing they don't give you is a bowl. And to continue that guitar metaphor, a real salad would have required lettuce, celery, cabbage, all the ingredients that are in here. I think it's got some nuts and salad dressing. You'd have to buy all that stuff separately and put it together. With a bago salad, it's all there ready to go. It's designed to mimic a real salad, but it's not a real salad. Making the bago salad goes like this. You need a set of reasonably sharp scissors that are going to cut through the plastic. If you try to do this with a knife, it can be difficult. It's a good time to check the best before date. It's usually printed on the front. And that's when you find out you've kind of been ripped off. You probably paid too much for an old salad. First step, dump it all into the bowl. Inside the bowl, you're going to find all those other ingredients we were talking about. They've carefully pre-packaged everything separately so that the dry bits don't go stale with the wet bits. Get your scissors out. There's going to be a lot of packaging material that goes along with this that you throw in the garbage. Got some kind of crunchy bits there, and you've got salad dressing. Some kits come with more than this. Some kits come with a little bag of bacon bits and extra tasty things to add flavor to your salad. It's best to put the salad dressing on last. Crunchy bits go next. More plastic. You can dump them right on top because we're going to mix this later. The last step is going to be to add the salad dressing. Notice it has its own best before date. This might not jive with what's in the bag, so it's best to check. Probably has cream and other ingredients that could go bad. So there isn't much more to it. I like to use one of these. Technically, it's a spork and another spoon. I find this just a really good way to mix up the salad. But that's the least of your worries. The Native Instruments Session Strummed Guitar looks like this, and it shares some similarities to the UJAM, except layout is a little bit different. In this case, the first page you see, I've selected a preset called 3/4 patterns. It sounds like this. In this middle area, you can pick up to 8 patterns with the idea that you change the pattern with your left hand by touching the trigger key. I might place that pattern. I click on C1, which is in the left hand at the lower. I can switch it to this pattern. And then maybe if I go into the chorus, I might use a different pattern. All these patterns are similar but slightly different. So down here is where you manage patterns. And there is a feature for auto chords. If you turn that on and display this, you can pick the key for those chords. I'm playing one note at a time and it's going to execute those chords. In some cases, you can press more than one key. So for example, and you see it says sus2 on C sharp. So if I hold that, that's a neat feature where you can hold down more than one key at the same time. The patterns are editable. So you click on this screen and you've got hundreds of patterns to choose from. You can filter the results, choose muted patterns, mixed patterns, hard, soft, the time signature of those patterns. These are all switches you can turn off and on to filter the results. And another way you can filter the results is by choosing where the beats fall. So you say, okay, I want something that starts on the first beat of every bar, but also accents something on the second beat of a bar. Selecting this pattern, it's filtering out what I get to see in the results window here to patterns that mimic the strength and accents of those things that I'm choosing. So if I choose this one, this is a way to browse through all of the patterns they deliver, and you can see this is kind of a different model than what you see in UJAM. So, middle area is all about patterns. You can see what the pattern is. It has the same feature to have the tempo to play in halftime or double time if you just want a quick change. Up in the top, there's a drop down for presets. It's a good long list of presets here, and every time you pick preset, you're getting a different combination of sounds. So it's using a sound called funky, which is a factory preset, and it is linked to this particular song with these patterns. And down at the bottom, much like UJAM, they have a representation of your MIDI controller. The blue keys are the melodic notes that you're playing. It gives you an octave to pick the notes. The blue area are articulations like a dive or a shot. And the pink areas are the key switches for picking the pattern. There's a few more parameters here. The voicing defaults to low, which are going to be more open sounding chords. And if you move the voicing up this slider, you're going to get voicings that are further up in inversions. They're not necessarily the open chords. And then over on the right here, you've got your sound presets. And there's a bunch of factory presets, but you can actually create your own by clicking on the tab over here called Sound. The things you can control here are the voicing. See, that's also controlled by the modulation wheel. It does have a doubling capability if you want the guitar to sound doubled and more full. EQ, you can turn on various effects on the EQ, high pass, low pass filter, smoothing the mids, getting rid of nasty sounding mids. Compression, how much compression? There's some compression presets. And then there's reverb. You can adjust how much reverb, the size of the hall. You've got a bunch of presets here. You could hear a bit of fret noise when I switch chords. You can increase the level of the fret noise. When I switch between chords, you can hear the fret noise. Then there are playback options on the last tab. Seen something like this before. You've got the degree of swing control here, amount of humanization, which really deviates from exact quantization. Sometimes you'll have a pattern that is a bar long, but it trails off in terms of its tightness at the end of a bar. And so every time you press a key, you want it to start again on bar 1, beat 1. Well, recording MIDI for virtual guitar is not what you're used to. In the case of a piano instrument, you actually see the chord. If you were to highlight the notes of the chord, it would actually tell you over here that's a G minor 7. But that's not how it works with virtual guitar. With both the session guitars from Native Instruments and UJAM, what you're recording are the trigger notes, things that are highlighted in color here. We take a look at the MIDI, we're just seeing the trigger notes. That's all you see. You don't see the chords, you don't see the full representation of the sound, the melodic sound. Now, it's a good idea to also record key switch for the pattern. That way, when you play it back, you know you're always going to play the right pattern. So these trigger notes are actually meaningless to anything other than the virtual guitar. You need the virtual guitar instrument in order to make sense of what those trigger notes do. That's all being determined by the virtual instrument itself. And these things have been designed so that you could play them with your left and right hand on a keyboard. Your left hand would do things like accents and dives, changing the pattern, and your right hand would play the chords or notes. Amber 2 from UJAM have some MIDI drag and drop capabilities, and you can build a song. If I look at the style phrases, I can actually drag this pattern up into the track. If you look at the MIDI behind it, it's still meaningless, but because they're represented as MIDI notes, I can change them. I can delete things. I could change a note. So that's a lot of freedom. The drag and drop MIDI, kind of cool. The fact that you can edit it in your DAW, even better. So if you think about it, there's really no way to represent all of the key switches and features that are in these virtual guitars as MIDI. You have to kind of get your head around that fact. You could bounce this as an audio file. If you prefer to work with an audio file, you've got the sum of everything that you've tweaked. Both of these products sound great, but let's just start with some differentiating criteria. It seems the UJAM products are easier to learn. There are 354 styles in the Amber 2, lots of patterns, lots of presets. They do pre-assign those patterns per song, so it's not user definable. The instrument mode is wide open, which gives you the ability to play patterns and notes any way you want. That common phrases set of key switches is very handy. The UI is all on one page, so it's simple. It does have MIDI drag and drop, so you can build a song rather than just record a song. There's a keyboard pop-up which shows help, and that's really handy because it's hard to remember what those key switches do. Most of the tone shaping on the main page really comes down to EQ. The limitation of one effect at a time is kind of strange. I'm not sure why they have that, but the finisher helps offset those limitations. There are some underdeveloped concepts like the variance strumming. For native instruments, you've got an extensive pattern library, and the focus is all on the patterns. 102 patterns, but in different combinations, make up 32 songs or more. You can have 8 patterns per song, user definable. It does allow partial patterns. The early UI has really evolved over the years, so we're looking at Strummed Acoustic, but if you're looking at some of the more recent session guitars, they've got a lot more features and capabilities. They've got stomp boxes, they've got hundreds more presets, and some additional features. The auto chord is kind of handy because it's quick for playing sus chords, sevenths, and ninths. Sessions has 13 different guitar modules. They've done a good job of separating strummed instruments from picked instruments from lead instruments. You can have multiple effects, there are playback options, but there is no MIDI drag and drop. These virtual guitars used to target keyboard players that don't play guitar. These days, there's a lot of guitar players that are using them because it's an easy and fast way to get your ideas recorded and into your DAW. You don't have to deal with the complexity of setting up an amp, miking up that amp, having an isolation area for the amplifier, and doing multiple takes. Great thing about the virtual guitars is you can edit the results. Hey, you know what? If you found this video interesting, leave a comment, click on the like button, consider subscribing to the channel because your support keeps me going. Thanks for watching.